Good day, students. Welcome to this JSS 1 Civic Education lesson on democracy, meaning and features. Democracy is the dominant system of government in the world today, and Nigeria is committed to democratic governance under the 1999 Constitution. As citizens, understanding what democracy truly means, beyond just elections, is essential for protecting it. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define democracy and its origins, describe the key features and principles of democracy, distinguish between direct and representative democracy, explain the advantages and disadvantages of democracy, and identify threats to democracy in Nigeria. Let us begin. What is democracy? Democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, people, plus kratos, rule/power, equals rule by the people. The most famous definition, Abraham Lincoln, a U.S. President, Gettysburg Address, 1863, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Of the people, government derives from the people, rulers come from among the people they govern. By the people, government is chosen and operates with the participation of the people at elections, referenda, public participation. For the people, government exists to serve the people, their welfare, rights, and development. Origins of democracy. Ancient Greece, Athens, 5th century BC, the birthplace of direct democracy, male citizens voted directly on laws and policies in the ecclesia, assembly. Women, slaves, and non-citizens excluded, it was limited. Magna Carta, 1215 English barons forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, limiting royal power and establishing that even the king was subject to law. Foundation of constitutional governance. French Revolution, 1789 Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, overthrow of absolute monarchy, declaration of citizen rights. Modern democracy, spread globally after World War II, United Nations Charter, 1945, promotes democratic governance and human rights. Nigeria, adopted democracy at independence, 1960, current Fourth Republic from 1999, over 25 years of unbroken civilian democratic rule. Key features, principles, of democracy. 1. Popular sovereignty, power belongs to the people, government derives authority from the consent of the governed, expressed through elections. Opposite of authoritarianism where power derives from force. 2. Free and fair elections, citizens have the right to vote and contest elections without coercion, ballots are secret, counting is honest, results are accepted. INEC in Nigeria is constitutionally mandated to conduct free and fair elections. 3. Majority rule with minority rights, the majority decides, through elections, but the rights of minorities, ethnic, religious, political, are protected by the Constitution, they cannot be exterminated, discriminated against, or silenced simply because they are fewer. 4. Rule of law, everyone, including the president, governors, military officers, and judges, is subject to the same law, no one is above the law. Violations are tried in court. 5. Separation of powers and checks and balances, power is divided among executive, legislature, and judiciary so no single arm dominates, each can check the others. 6. Fundamental human rights, freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, movement, protected by the Constitution, Chapter 4. 7. Independent judiciary, courts make impartial judgments based on law, not on the wishes of the ruling party or executive. 8. Multi-party system, multiple political parties compete for power, citizens have genuine choices, no single party monopolizes power. A one-party state is not democratic even if it holds elections. 9. Regular elections, government must periodically return to the people for renewal of its mandate, no government serves indefinitely without election. 10. Freedom of the press, media can investigate and criticize government without fear of censorship, journalism is essential to holding power accountable. 11. Constitutional government, government operates within a written or unwritten constitution that limits its powers and guarantees citizens' rights. 12. civil society and civic participation. Beyond voting, citizens can petition, protest peacefully, form organizations, and engage in public discourse. Types of democracy. Direct democracy. Citizens vote directly on every policy issue, no representatives. Example, ancient Athens, Swiss referenda. Limitation, impractical for a large country like Nigeria, 220 million people cannot all gather to vote on every bill. Representative democracy. In direct democracy, citizens elect representatives who make decisions on their behalf. Used in Nigeria, National Assembly, UK, Parliament, USA, Congress. Limitation, representatives may not always reflect constituents' will accurately. Parliamentary democracy. The Prime Minister and Cabinet are drawn from and accountable to the legislature, Parliament, e.g., UK, Nigeria's First Republic, 1960 to 1966. Presidential democracy. President is separately elected by the people. President and legislature are independent of each other but check each other, e.g., Nigeria's current system, 1999 Constitution, and USA. Advantages of democracy. Protects individual rights and freedoms. Allows peaceful transfer of power, critical in Nigeria, 2015 was Nigeria's first. Encourages accountability, citizens can remove bad leaders at elections. Promotes stability, democratic systems are more resistant to violent revolution. Encourages development, democratic governments are more responsive to public needs. Disadvantages and challenges. Expensive, elections in Nigeria cost enormous sums, 2023 general election estimated at over 350 billion Nigerian nairas. Slow, democratic decision-making involves debate, consultation, and voting, may be too slow in emergencies. Risk of majority tyranny, the majority can oppress minorities if rights are not explicitly protected. Manipulation, vote buying, electoral violence, and rigging undermine democracy in practice. Uninformed voters, if citizens lack education or access to information, they may vote against their own interest. Threats to democracy in Nigeria. Electoral violence and rigging, ballot box snatching, voter intimidation, result manipulation. Vote buying, stomach infrastructure. Politicians distribute cash, food, or gifts on election day to purchase votes, undermines free choice. Ethnicity and religion in voting. Voters support candidates based on ethnic or religious identity rather than competence and policy. Military intervention. Historical Nigeria experienced 6 successful military coups, 1966 × 2, 1975, 1983, 1985, 1993, each terminated democratic governance. Poverty. Poor voters are more susceptible to vote buying. Economic dependence on politicians undermines political independence. Weak institutions. When INEC, courts, and police are perceived as partisan, trust in democracy erodes. 3 examination questions. Question 1. Define democracy and state 5 of its key features. Democracy is a system of government in which the people hold supreme power, either exercised directly or through freely elected representatives. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Lincoln. 5 key features. A. Popular sovereignty. Power belongs to the people. Government derives authority from elections. B. Free and fair elections. Citizens vote without coercion. Results are honest and accepted. C. Rule of law. All persons, including government officials, are equal before and bound by the law. D. Protection of fundamental human rights. Freedom of speech, religion, assembly, movement are constitutionally guaranteed. E. Separation of powers and checks and balances. Executive, legislature, and judiciary are independent and constrain each other to prevent dictatorship. Question 2. Distinguish between direct and representative democracy, giving an example of each. Direct democracy. All citizens personally vote on every issue. There are no representatives. Citizens themselves make the laws and policies. Example, ancient Athens, 5th century BC, where male citizens voted in the ecclesia on laws and wars, modern Swiss referenda on constitutional amendments. Advantage, most participatory. Disadvantage, impractical for large nations. Representative democracy, indirect citizens elect representatives who make decisions on their behalf. Example, Nigeria, citizens elect senators and representatives to the National Assembly. These representatives debate and pass laws in Abuja on the citizens' behalf. Advantage, practical for large nations. Disadvantage, representatives may not always act in voters' interest. Question 3. State 4 threats to democracy in Nigeria and explain one of them in detail. 4 threats: A. Electoral violence. B. Vote buying. C. Ethnic and religious voting. D. Weak institutions. Detailed explanation of vote buying. Vote buying, also called stomach infrastructure, occurs when politicians distribute cash, food parcels, or other gifts to voters on or before election day in exchange for their votes. It is deeply entrenched in Nigerian electoral politics. Surveys by Afrobarometer and Yoga Africa have documented high rates of reported vote buying in all Nigerian elections. It undermines democracy because it removes the freedom of citizens to vote according to policy preference. Poor voters feel obligated to vote for their benefactor. It gives wealthy politicians an unfair advantage over more qualified but less wealthy candidates. It makes elections about the distribution of short-term cash rather than long-term governance competence. It is a criminal offense under Nigeria's Electoral Act but is difficult to prosecute. 3 common mistakes. Mistake 1. Saying democracy only means elections. Elections are one feature of democracy, and they are not sufficient on their own. A country can hold regular elections but still be authoritarian if there is no free press, opposition candidates are persecuted, courts are controlled by the ruling party, voters are coerced. True democracy requires all the features discussed: rule of law, human rights protection, free press, multi-party competition, independent judiciary, not just elections. Mistake 2. Saying Nigeria has always been a democracy since independence. Nigeria's post-independence history includes multiple military coups: 1966, 1975, 1983, 1985, 1993, that interrupted democratic governance. Nigeria is currently in its 4th republic, from 1999. The previous 3 republics, 1960 to 66, 1979 to 83, and the aborted 1993 republic, were ended by military intervention. Nigeria's democratic trajectory has not been a straight line. Mistake 3. Thinking democracy is perfect. Every democracy has weaknesses: vote buying in Nigeria, campaign finance in the USA, Brexit confusion in UK. Democracy is the best available system, not a perfect one. Civic education students must be critical, identify democracy's strengths and weaknesses, and work to improve it. Summary. Democracy, rule by the people, Greek, demos plus kratos. Lincoln, government of, by, and for the people. Features: popular sovereignty, free/fair elections, majority rule plus minority rights, rule of law, separation of powers plus checks and balances, fundamental human rights, independent judiciary, multi-party system, regular elections, press freedom, constitutional government. Types: direct, Athens, Swiss referenda, everyone votes on everything, impractical for Nigeria, representative/indirect, Nigeria, UK, USA, elect representatives, parliamentary, PM from legislature, versus presidential or separately elected president, Nigeria system. Advantages: protects rights, peaceful power transfer, accountability, stability, responsive governance. Disadvantages: expensive, slow, risk of majority tyranny, prone to manipulation. Threats in Nigeria: electoral violence, vote buying, ethnic/religious voting, historical military coups, poverty, weak institutions. For homework: A. Define democracy and list 6 features. B. Explain 3 threats to democracy in Nigeria. C. What is the difference between parliamentary and presidential democracy? Attempt a quiz on your LMS. Democracy is not a gift, it must be defended by every citizen. Visit Litech Academy at academy.litech.com.ng. Until next time.